Mind the fact my hair is tied up. Looking kind of drippy though. You get me? Come on. Oh, yeah, mic's on. Okay, we're gonna use this mainly because that is the timer. So I think I did all this, yeah. I got to dissect all the questions. So. Okay. I don't understand this question. A patient keeps using medical jargon they found online. Medical jargon. What on earth does that word mean? Bro, jargon means like you're talking jargon, bro. That's like you're talking nonsense. Okay, a patient keeps using medical jargon. How would you re-explain the issues? Okay, started Okay, so if a patient is using medical jargon, that possibly means that they actually have a level of depth of understanding of their disease or their problem. Or possibly it means they've done, a chat GPT search, Gemini search, Google search, and they've actually gotten themselves confused. I think before I would go ahead to re-explain the issue in plain language, is I would ask them to explain, what do you know so far? Because as a medical student, as a medical student, I would have hopefully already covered the patient's disease, illness, or problem. I would have discovered it, I would have studied it before, or I'm there to learn. But let's say, for example, it's not a simple disease, but it's a more known mechanistic disease such as diabetes, and they got basic terminology wrong, like blood glucose, insulin, glucagon, then it's safe to say the patient does not understand what's going on. However, if the patient shows they have somewhat depth of knowledge, maybe they did biology, etc., or they just researched their disease, then yes, I could use plain language to re-explain it, but I wouldn't have to. I would not dumb it down, but I'd bring my explanations down to the level they can clearly understand. Because going forward with surgeries, etc., decisions, and to respect one of the ethical pillars of autonomy, we want the patient to, in order to make autonomous decisions, they need to have the capacity to make these decisions. And we need to make sure they have a level of understanding they can make the right decisions, therefore, in their best interest. Also, leading to better patient autonomy. So, but I try to put myself in their shoes. Only Unless I had a very good, clear example on how to break it down, I'd probably ask, and mostly another colleague who's might specialize in this area a bit more, because what is quite a dangerous thing to do to dumb things down is that it can put patients at risk for it can put them at risk for other factors, such as I see some information out there dumbed down for diabetes, where some people just say, just don't eat sugar. However, there are carbohydrates that are so highly refined that they can even spike your blood glucose faster than glucose, which they just aren't explored. So I would explain it into plain language so that in the end they're able to reiterate what I said with shown signs of understanding. You can kind of tell when someone doesn't know what's going on, what's being understood. You can you can tell what the person's saying. So I would explain it to them at a level whereas they can continue feeding me back information of what I've said with understanding. Yes. And then there's also many other factors to consider, such as age. If a patient's quite young, they they may not just have like the maturity level, the brain development to comprehend other things, and it may just be better to leave the information with a carer or a guardian, medical proxy. Yeah, I'm actually it's just 5 straight minutes. Patient keep using medical jargon. Jargon they found online. How would you re-explain issues in plain language? No, I'm actually gonna have a shit. I be screaming out, gang, gang. Do you gang bang? Brother, I'm sorry, yeah. I'm actually gonna punch you out in the flipping face. It just told me you are invited. UCL. You are invited. UCL World Cancer Day. Oh my days, bro. UCL, you're gonna flipping get something. Okay, that might have actually been one of the nicest poops in my life. No one needed to know that. But hold on. Brother. Okay. But yeah, that out until 5 minutes. So I hold on. I'm gonna fill up my water bottle. Brother, I did not realize how much I stunk out of the bathroom. So yeah, I do that. I think I handled that question right. Patient keeps using medical jargon. Okay. A relative challenge. Okay. So if a relative challenges is chat, I let me bookmark the time so I know I get the time is 14:40. For relative challenges, sorry, I said the flipping time. We're gonna start talking at 15. Okay, so if a relative challenges what I have to say for my explanation, they have a problem, which is important because as a role of a doctor, the main goal is patient welfare to be maximized with a disgruntled, unhappy relative that's caring for them or is just there isn't a correlation to what the patient's going to feel, but it'll surely affect it. So even though we are treating the patient, we want to make sure everyone is as happy as possible. Right. So we're not going to dismiss their concerns just because they're a relative. No, we're going to ask them specifically what was wrong, not in a challenging manner, not in a defensive manner, but in a sympathetic tone. And I don't mean as in we care, because we are going to care. Why do they have a problem? So I'm gonna ask them genuinely from the bottom of my heart, what's the problem? What is wrong with my explanation? And hopefully coming in a calm manner signals to the relative that there's no argument that's going to come forth. there's no argument that's going to come forth, no problems are going to occur. It signals that I'm ready for an open and honest conversation. So this is where hopefully the relative can open up. Hey, what what is the problem? What would you like me to change? And then we can go off from there. Obviously, from what they had a problem with could be a range of reasons. If they want me to change something I can't do, or it would be against the role of a doctor, such as possibly like prescription dosages, frequencies, I would have to explain to the relative the procedures, not be dismissive of, oh, this is just procedure, this is that, but explain why and try to be as cooperative as possible and even make adjustments if necessary. Because keep in mind, this is a relative of the patient. They are with the patient. They might possibly know more about the patient than we do as the hospital because they're a relative. So it's important to listen and get as much information as possible so we can make the right decisions. Obviously, it's still important to have the patient's concern into this. But for example, if it's a child or someone very elderly, or someone very elderly, they might be a medical proxy and help with the decision process. Got about a minute 30 left. Any further questions? None? Okay. Let me think. Just want to ensure all parties are happy, really. Let's say when I mentioned before approaching them in a calm manner, let's say the patient doesn't calm down, they get more and more rowdy. It's very important to keep calm and possibly even leave the scenario for another minute or so. Or it could be possibly they have a problem with us. I've seen issues and stories where some families have just refused to see certain doctors over certain things that were certainly discriminatory. But it is important the patient still gets the right healthcare. Obviously, I'm not assuming they were doing something discriminatory, but if let's say they would prefer another doctor or medical student, I would honor that to the best of my ability. Obviously, there's limited resources then. Yeah, I think that went pretty well, to be fair. As long as it can go. Close the eye, folks. I should put emphasis on the mid consultation part. peer dominates group task. That was a bit zesty, I can't lie. What's the time? 23:23. Okay, a peer dominates a group task. This greatly depends on the task at hand. Possibly it's been agreed beforehand that this person can take charge. If it's accepted by everyone that this person wants to do a larger contribution than others, then I guess we could go forward. But if this is a task such as one posed in medical school where it is assumed everyone has equal responsibility and roughly equal output, as that is generally, pardon me, how a team should work, then rebalancing of roles would have to take place. Yeah, it depends on a lot. So I believe this can come from a very non confrontational manner whilst in a peer. It doesn't have to be in an embarrassing tone. For example, if there's a group project, we're all on a table, we can just make a suggestion like, do we do a group vote? For example, if you single if you single them out, it can, even if you say it in a monotone, non-confrontational way, it can come off as aggressive and that you are trying to embarrass them possibly. Best way would do a group vote. So everyone's thought is taken into consideration and no one specifically is being pointed out. So, for example, you could ask, hello, is everyone okay with the prioritization of who does what right now? For example, I had to do similar things, like questions on my Duke of Edinburgh trip. Whereas overall, it was, we traveled in groups of 6 and 8 on our training, and I was the one who had the map and would make like the final decisions on where to go. And it was a majority 2 to 3 people that were making the decision, talking about, okay, we're here, we're that. And even if I was sure and agreed with them, I would ensure to still ask all other members of the group, do you agree with this decision? Do you think there's another decision? And even most of the time, there wouldn't be a disagreement. If there was a disagreement, I would still take their thought into consideration. I'll show them that I listened. And by saying, okay, for example, okay, I'll keep that in mind. We all so far think it's here, but we'll go back and then go your direction. So when you share out the responsibility, it takes away the blame from others, and it will certainly not have a leave a feeling of embarrassment for the person that's taken over. It most likely won't even cross their mind. Yeah, let's ask ChatGPT about it. Because there's probably some things I can't think about. That was only 4 minutes as well. What time did I start? 20, 23:30. Oh, I actually did 5 minutes. Okay. Why is Jim on there?
You are a junior doctor and
safety. If you're worrying about your medical school interviews, don't stress, FutureDoc has your back. Here are some really common medical school interview questions that you might not be expecting. So one that universities absolutely love to throw in there are role play style questions. So you'll go into your station and you'll have somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes to work through a problem that the actor might be having. It's really tricky, especially under those time constraints, but you really have to be asking all the right questions in order to make that actor feel at ease with you in order to discuss their issues. Another type of interview question that you probably aren't expecting are data interpretations. So instead of having to speak to an interviewer for 5 minutes, you may be expected to go into a station and work through some maths problems. Now, it's really important that you show the entire process of how you come to your solution, because that's going to get you some of those extra points. Data interpretation might be a graph that you'll actually need to talk through with an interviewer. It's always important to come up with your own conclusions about the data presented to you. The only way to get really good at this is to practice.
Made it to this point, whatever admissions team that's offered you an interview believes that you can become a doctor. It's more, who are you? Are you able to hold a conversation? And are you a human being beyond like the pages of your application?
The things like they say that, but so many people get rejected. It's like if I do my bun.
Hey, Bradley, how are you today?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Okay, we're gonna practice some interview questions. Very exciting. You have one interview coming up, which is awesome.
Thanks.
Super exciting. So I think this is your first practice, and I think the best thing to do is practice traditional interview questions. I do think a little differently. I take notes while you give the answer, and I like to give feedback after each question instead of just asking you questions for the whole half hour.
Perfect.
So does that work for you?
That's perfect. That's better. So I think that's better for me. So perfect.
Okay, I'd like to start off with tell me about yourself, but before I have you give your answer, I have a formula for tell me about yourself. And it's a foolproof formula. If you use this formula for every interview, your answer will never strike. And it helps you remember what you're going to say so that you're not veering off on like why medicine and you're not veering off with here's my resume. So if you think about a trajectory like a timeline, like past, present, future, and then happy note and on hobbies. So past being this is my name, this is where I grew up, a little bit about your family, and then ultimately where you went to college, maybe your major, maybe one thing about college that's really important, like I started a nonprofit or I was an athlete, okay? And then since graduating, if you've graduated, this is what I'm doing in my gap year. If you haven't graduated, and from now until I begin medical school, I'll be finishing my senior year. I'm looking forward to this. And because most students end flat, I feel like they just stop. They like jam on the brakes. To avoid that, if you end with like, lastly, in my free time, I love like biking and running and baking and traveling. I recently just, went on a trip to Italy and it's the first time I was in Europe and I'm just very excited to be here today. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Oh, you can do it. And it should be like a minute,
That was
a minute and a half.
Okay.
You don't want to lose someone's interest and you also don't want to go on a tangent and answer other questions like why medicine.
Absolutely. Okay.
All right, let's start that one. So Bradley, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So my name is Bradley. I was born and raised in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, which is a suburb about 40 minutes northwest of Detroit. I lived with my mother, my father, and my two younger sisters my whole life, and my family has been the basis for everything in my life. I grew up caretaking for my sisters. They're 2 and 5 years younger than me, so I've been a little bit of a caretaker towards them. And my whole family is the most important thing in my life, whether it be board games after dinner or family vacations. My favorite times of my life have all been with my family, and so my family's been very special to me. I recently graduated from the University of Michigan and studied biopsychology, cognition, and neuroscience, which was a very interesting major and something that I hope will propel me into a career in medicine. Since graduating from Michigan, I have worked at the Gary Bernstein Community Health Center, which is a nonprofit clinic for uninsured Metro Detroit residents, and I've loved my experience there. And that has propelled me into my gap year, which in 2 weeks I'll be moving to Salt Lake City, Utah, where I will also be working at a nonprofit clinic for Utah residents about health insurance, as well as I'll be working an administrative role for a nonprofit called National Ability Center, which takes people with disabilities hiking, mountain biking, skiing, climbing, and takes them on all different outdoor activities. And since the outdoors has been such an important part of my life, I love sports and being outside. And at my summer camp, going on canoe trips where we're in the woods for 5 to 15 days with no outside communication, just being outside and active and engaged has been at the forefront of my life, and has been something that I really look forward to hopefully combining into my role as a physician in the future.
Okay, that was excellent.
Thank you.
It was 2 minutes, so it was a little longer,
Okay.
but that's okay because it was easy to follow.
Okay.
It was really easy to follow. You told me about your past and just telling me about how much your family means to you and how you were a caretaker for your sisters. Just those few little words tell me so much about who you are, that you're compassionate and you're empathetic, and I love that. I love hearing that. You know, you went into your major, your job, your gap year, and you ended on a happy note. Telling me a little bit about the outdoors. So there were 2 points in there that I found that I could do a follow-up question.
Great.
So I'm gonna give you some follow-up questions.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So thank you for that answer. I have a few follow-up questions. The first is, you mentioned that at the University of Michigan, you were a biology, cognitive neuroscience major, and you said it was really interesting. Those are your words. So expand on that. Why do you find it was an interesting major compared to others?
Absolutely. So I decided to actually pursue that major in high school. I researched a lot about the majors at the University of Michigan once I was accepted, and I took an anatomy class my senior year of high school, and that was the first time I was able to study the body and medicine, and that was my introduction. And my favorite unit in that whole class was neuroanatomy, where I was able to learn a lot about the brain and how it connects all the other organs of our body, and basically how the brain is at the forefront of every decision, all of our motivations, etc. And I decided to choose to pursue that major in college. And it's a major where they say it's half neuroscience and half psychology, and I really enjoyed having that mix of hard science versus soft science and being able to apply it to different case studies and people. And that was also a motivation for my research, which I performed in college, which I worked in a neurology laboratory that studied dystonia and Parkinson's disease in rats. And that was my motivation for that, was learning about all these things my first year of college and thinking about what I wanted to do research on. And I emailed and reached out to a bunch of professors in the neurology and neuroscience departments, and my research experience was great. And being able to connect between the things I was learning in my research and the items I was learning in my classes doing my major was really awesome. And I was really fortunate to be able to have those 2 outlets to study medicine in the brain.
Thank you. That was really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really good. You offered me so much context. And if you have an interviewer that may not know what that major is, explain that the majors have neuroscience, have psychology, studying the body and the mind, and neuroanatomy. I love the comparison of hard science versus soft science, and how you didn't just give me the explanation of the major, you also gave me information on how it propelled you to do research and what kind of research. So great job. Great job. Welcome. Okay, here's another follow-up question from Tell Me About Yourself. You said that you're currently working for a nonprofit in Metro Detroit, and that you will be moving for the rest of your gap year to Utah to work for a nonprofit, which is quite a change from Metro Detroit to Utah. So tell me, how do you handle change? How do you best handle going from a comfortable environment that you're used to a brand new environment? Because for many students entering med school, it's unlike, you're entering an environment that's unlike anything you've ever been involved in before. So how do you handle change? And how do you think you would handle that transition to medical school and apply those skills?
Absolutely. Full disclosure, I used to be terrible with change. Terrible. Moved in the 8th grade, literally I think 3 to 4 miles away, and I was distraught. I thought my life was over. All the house that I grew up in, I created all these memories, and I met some of my best friends in the neighborhood. I thought my life was over just by moving to the house 3 to 4 miles away. I went to the same school, I had the same friends, but it was really tough for me to grasp. And honestly, even in that move, which was, looking back, something that was so silly that I was so upset about, I learned a lot about myself, and that was something that was a huge transition from high school to college. And for me, I really handled it by doing my research, learning about organizations, clubs, ways to get involved, ways where I get acclimated to the environment and the curriculum, and find my place somewhere. And I think that's gonna be really important for me to do in this upcoming change as well. So I would say I really look at the research. I like to do my research, but at the same time, I'm a little more of a free-flowing individual. I like to take things as they are, and I'm also very social. So I like to play things by ear and do my research, but at the same time, try different things, try new places, try new foods, meet new people. So I would say those are the ways I handle change, which is much improved from moving as an 8th grade house 3 miles away.
I would say so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was good. I loved that you went back in time and told me a little bit about where this ability to adapt to change came from. It was less than 2 minutes, which was great. And the 2 keywords that I got out of this were, in telling me the story about being a kid, you have tremendous self-awareness. Like, to reflect back on that and just be aware of how that impacted you tells me you have self-awareness. And then it also tells me that you have an inherent sense of adaptability. Like, being able to adapt to new climates. I don't think you have a problem adapting to a new group of people, new group of classmates and professors and environment in medical school.
Thank you.
So that's an example of how, like, giving a question like that from the interviewer's point of view, like, keywords and competencies like that stick out.
Do you think it's important for me to say those words explicitly? Okay.
No, that's not your job to do that.
Okay, gotcha.
But somebody who's trained to interview all the time just knows that
Okay.
there are certain competencies that stick out, right? Like, you could tell me a story and I could think to myself, wow, that's resilient, or that's empathy. But just because,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, Bradley, it's a $1 million question here. Why medicine? Why do you want to become a doctor?
Absolutely. Growing up, had no idea what I wanted to do. My first career aspiration was actually as an ice cream truck driver because I loved ice cream and I wanted
Not a bad career. Kids are always happy.
it'd probably be a side job in the future, but I really just wanted to make people happy and care for them. And I realized maybe ice cream wasn't the best way to do that. I would say my motivation to work in a career in medicine started as a high school student. I was able to accompany my mom to her job as a pediatric physical therapist. And she works in a school district and works with a lot of students with disabilities. And just seeing the camaraderie and the patience that she had when working with these kids and how much they loved her and respected her and the teamwork. And she worked with all these different people, occupational therapists, speech therapists, teachers, and seeing everyone come together to really make the lives of the people. around them, in these cases, these kids, that much better. Really inspired me. And so I went back, and that next semester I took that anatomy class, as I previously mentioned, and I just became fascinated with the human body. And my senior year of high school, I had an unfortunate injury. I dislocated my shoulder and had to undergo surgery. And during the surgery and the recovery, it was one of the toughest times of my life. I wasn't really able to perform a lot of my favorite activities outside of my friends during the summer, and my mental and emotional health definitely took a toll. And throughout that process,
Brother, is this Cameron from the book Ward D?
my doctor routinely checked up on me, would send me texts, call me. He even came all night when I was in excruciating pain, helped me find a new medication to take. And that was really the nail in the coffin for me. He improved my life way beyond my shoulder. I had a little bit of an identity crisis and was gained a lot of weight and just really depressed for a long period of time. And him being there and helping me and truly taking the time out of his day to care for me really put the nail in the coffin for me. And I knew if I could do that for my patients, I could really promote health and wellness and eventually happiness across my future community. So that's why I would like to pursue career medicine.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask you a few follow-up questions, but I think that was good. You did spend a whole minute in the beginning talking about like your mom. So I think you offered a lot of context behind it, but I do think if you were to trim anything, maybe trim that a little bit.
Absolutely.
But you had a nice trajectory, and I like how you reflected on, it sounds like a great doctor who actually came to visit you at home. Can't find many of those these days, so that's fantastic. And often it is an experience from our childhood or adolescence that really creates a spark. It's like, wow, like I want to do this for a living. So I'm going to give you two follow-up questions from your answer. One starter than the other.
Okay.
I'll do the easy one first. So what impact do you hope to make in medicine?
Absolutely. The easy answer is I want to spread health and wellness throughout my community and make my community happier and healthier place. However, specifically over these past few months working in this nonprofit clinic, I've really found a passion for helping people in this vulnerable and underserved community.
Okay, what contribution do I want to make in medicine? I definitely want to go on to do further research. 100%. I want to produce research that comes out of the population and behavioral science. What is it? Population and behavioral division, St. Andrews. Yeah, population and behavioral science research division at St. Andrews. I'm so interested in the concept of the brain and how we can use behavioral therapies to help us, and how certain behavioral like habits, thought processes, like subconscious things we don't necessarily think have any impact on our life can contribute to these diseases such as depression, anxiety, etc. I'm I want to do that.
And specifically in the future, I hope to create or work at or administrate a nonprofit clinic for these individuals. I think everyone has the right to health access and health equity. And for me, I think the most direct way to do that is through education and care for underserved populations. And that's really the impact that I hope to have on a community in the future. That can be my main job or a side volunteer position, but either way, I think the most direct and fundamental impact you can have on a person is through their health. And so I hope to do that for populations who may not have that access in the future.
How would you approach health education for immigrant populations, considering potential cultural and language differences?
Absolutely. The clinic I work at now, the patient population is 80% Hispanic population. And of those, 60% don't speak any English. So the language barrier is definitely something very difficult and something I've had firsthand access to. And seeing the methods that this clinic goes to, whether it be seminars or advertising throughout neighborhoods or mobile health clinics or workshops at the local community center with Spanish-speaking people as well as translators, just that impact alone can go such a long way. And I've seen it firsthand with a specific patient. She came in and had very severe hypertension. She hadn't seen a doctor since she moved from Colombia, and it had been almost 3 years. And the education that the physician gave her, and then also referring her to our weekly workshops we do for these patients, seeing her arrive at these workshops and truly soak in all this information and come back weeks later with her medications taken, she realized what she needed to do to mitigate her condition. It was really inspiring, and that's the impact I hope to have on my future community as well.
Thank you. So both those questions, I thought you did a really good job.
Thank you.
You do a really great job you give a strong answer, but you do it in a laid back way.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
whether you're nervous or not. And I mean, I've seen a lot of students who are they're very nervous on the interview, but the key is to always feel like you're just having a conversation. And that's really what the interview is, right? You've made it to this point. Whatever admissions team that's offered you an interview believes that you can become a doctor. It's more, who are you? Are you able to hold a conversation? And are you a human being beyond like the pages of your application? And you do so in an effortless way, which is great.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I thought the impact that you hope to make on medicine, I thought that answer was really good. I like when students give examples of their own experiences, right? Because you're not just telling, you're not just saying this is what I plan to do and want to do. You're saying like, this is what I want to do. And here's how I know,
Exactly.
right? This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm seeing. And this is what's convinced me. So you're giving evidence. And I think you did a good job. The second question I gave you was a little tougher.
Yeah.
That was an actual question from a med school. Yeah.
Real deal.
Yeah. That was a real deal question. And I thought you did a good job. I was looking for different ways of spreading health literacy. And you gave great examples, whether it be like mobile health clinics and seminars.
Thank you. Yeah, something I'm really passionate about. So that was, like you keep saying, like I'm very laid back, and I am a more of a laid back person, and we can hold a conversation. But these are real, like super genuine, real answers. And
Yeah.
I learned a lot about this in my application. It's been good. It's been good.
Good. How would your friends describe you?
It's a great question.
A fun question.
Yeah, that is a fun question. I would say my friends at the forefront would say I'm a leader, whether it be making plans in the group chat or getting people. To try different things, different foods, different places. I think my friends would definitely say I'm a vocal leader in the group. I also think they would say I'm also very cooperative. And I think my friends and I love playing board games. That's like our thing, which is very funny, especially in the winter. A lot of board games, a lot of card games. And I think they would say whenever we play a team game, I have the ability to be at the forefront, be the vocal guy, where I can also sit back and observe a lot, especially in a lot of these strategy games. And I think those are two of the things that they would also say about me. I think they would also say that I'm very motivated. I love my friends a lot, but I think some of them have trouble motivating themselves. And so I try to motivate myself, obviously, as well as also motivate them. And I think that's really important in a group of friends. They want to make sure everyone's on the same page and happy and comfortable. And so hopefully motivating them to be their best and achieve what they can achieve will provide great results. And I think it already has, and I think it will continue to also.
Great. Okay, that was a great answer. Yeah, because I took notes on that and I'm saying to myself, okay, like you're a leader, you're open-minded, those are all qualities that will allow you to do really well in medical school. You're cooperative, you're going to be with classmates from all different walks of life, right? All different ages, all different walks.
Definitely.
And you're motivated, which is great. So you sound like you would be a great classmate to have. And sometimes in your interview day, part of the interview is not just faculty, but you might get students who interview you.
Mhm.
And it's funny because a lot of students will say, I'm more nervous to have the students interview me than faculty. It's like so odd to me. But from the student point of view, they're basically trying to see, can I envision you as one of my
Right.
Can I
Absolutely.
picture you here? Can I picture you like having a seat at the table? Will you fit in? And all of the things that you talked about in that answer, to me, make you seem like you would fit in.
Thank you. I realized like halfway through, I didn't want to sell myself up too much in like a medical way. I realized like, oh, I don't want to overdo it because like you said, it's a little more fun, more laid back question. I stopped myself and tried to reroute a little bit because I think that question, like you said, it's a great question. It's very easy to answer, but it's hard to answer only that question and not take it somewhere else.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point because in asking how your friends would describe you, it doesn't always have to be positive, right? You can say something like, my friends will also say that I can be annoying, that I'm very punctual and they're not. I always show up early and they always show up late and I get more time and sometimes I have to be a little more accommodating or something like that. Yeah, and it's okay to reflect in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's do one more question and we'll do a more reflective one. Okay. Tell me about a time you had to think outside the box in order to find a solution for something.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a tough one. I feel like there's a lot of different neurons.
Okay, so this isn't good. Thinking outside the box isn't gonna be like a normal. It's not gonna be a normal like problem solving theory, but it's going to be. Okay, I'll give you the scenario. So I sat my economics A level. No, I'm doing year 2, but I'm also in year 1 maths, year 1 biology. And this is when it started picking up my idea of wanting to do medicine. And I started researching more into it. I was like, oh, I've got to do medicine, I've got to do medicine. Look at the requirements, and chemistry is the main subject that's needed. Obviously, I'm just doing biology and maths this year. And not only that, you need 3 A levels in the academic 2 years of A levels, right? So even though I was doing 3 at the time, technically I was only doing maths and biology in one academic circle, and then economics was in an earlier one. So I had so many people tell, this was like very late in the year, so many people tell me, oh, just wait, do chemistry and 2 other A levels next year, and then, or 2 years after that. Or they were just saying, okay, go into biochem, do a bachelor's, and then go into chemistry. But in my opinion, what's outside the box, no teacher suggested doing it. Many teachers have actually put me off doing it. They did not want me to do it. because they said it won't be possible, but the chemistry lead let me do it. I said, okay, let me join chemistry late. I will catch up. And chemistry is notoriously known for being one of the hardest A levels. And not only that, we were already 80% through the year. We had like a couple months left before the end of the year, the academic year. I sent a message, she got it through, and I got given such a short deadline. I would say even I was thinking outside of my box. Like I was so depleted. I genuinely thought I was just like I wasn't gonna get into chemistry. I didn't have the time, I didn't have the knowledge to learn it. Because keep in mind, during this time, I still got my A level economics exams coming up soon, and then I'm also still doing biology and maths. But I decided I'm going to dedicate all my time to learning chemistry to get to pass these exams or to pass the test, and I revised so much. Also, I didn't like get A's or anything, but I was able to get B's and C's on topics that they'd spend months teaching, and I was cramming the knowledge within a week. Some of them were within 4 days of each other. I had to cram like 4 months worth of content in 4 days. And I was just being told by everyone, you can't do it. It's not possible. And I think I really showed resilience by thinking outside the box, doing what other people said. Obviously, it wasn't like a miracle, but many people tell me it's not possible. You won't do it. And I was able to go through and complete that.
So yeah, so I would say one situation where I had to think more outside the box was last summer. So the summer of 2023, I actually worked as the counselor and training director at a summer camp I grew up going to, which is my favorite place in the world. It's in Northern Ontario in the middle of the woods. And I was in charge of 35, 16-year-olds, teaching them how to be a counselor, doing fun team building games, just taking them through how to do everything that they need to know how to be a counselor. And two of these individuals, one of them was actually my sister. They just butt heads a lot. It was a guy and a girl, and they butt heads a lot. And this is a difficult situation for me. Obviously, I'm very close to my sister, and obviously I care deeply for the other boy. And I had to really think of how to make these two get along. Because I think, in full disclosure, I think they're very similar people. They're big personalities, they like things done their way. And I tried to get the two of them to see that they maybe aren't so different after all, it just didn't work. So finally, I decided to put them on a canoe trip together, staff them on a canoe trip together with a bunch of kids. And I figured if they have to put on their best faces for these kids, naturally they'll be able to get along with each other because, again, the whole point of being at campus is make everything that's great for the campus as possible. So I put these two on a canoe trip together. I said, it's going to either go really great or really poorly. I sat them both down before and just talked to them about what I was doing, and neither of them were very pleased. But at the end of the trip, they came back and they were glowing about each other. They said, this guy is such a hard worker. I really realize where he comes from now, and I think that he's a great guy. And the guy said, I realize your sister is great, and I realize why she is the way she is. And they weren't the best of friends at the end of the summer. They're full disclosure, they weren't. But they're cordial enough with each other to make everyone else in a much happier, lighthearted mood. They didn't bring the mood down to the group like they did before. That's one time I had to think a little bit more outside the box.
That's a great example.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good example. And that's an example of a question where you have to think on your feet.
Absolutely.
And I always like to say that, when you go into interview day, like, have a bag of tricks with you. Have an arsenal of, if I get a question about overcoming a challenge or an ethical decision.
Yeah. A distressed carer is near tears about medication side effects. How would you? I think like I can already do that. Yeah, struggling to hear. I don't actually know what I would do for this one. I'm actually gonna start to lower the brightness on it. I just realized it's not even that, it's a flipping lamp. Who's messaging my phone? Hey. Brother, there's absolutely no way there's a fucking Teams group chat going on. So stupid. Bro, there's no way. I got the flipping, I got to do my face ID, type in the code, and oh my days, bro. So stupid, man. So there's any chemistry joke, because they're all bad. Okay, so okay, we're gonna start this. We're gonna do a 5 minute thing. This is gonna be the last one of the day. Then that's just gonna be communication. Shit, it's gonna work through this paper, I guess. Apart when it gets to a certain point, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think we can really get any further than that. Okay, so it's gonna be 57.40. Terms state support. How do you manage consent and understanding safety in the meantime? Okay, so if an interpreter is needed, this means that the patient is not going to fully understand what I'm communicating and what is going on. Possibly they're too young, possibly they're quite old, might be even a language barrier. What is important to understand is using the Mental Capacity Act 2005, the person must be able to weigh up the pros and decision. Obviously, the person is not, they could be someone that has learning difficulties, but just under Mental Capacity Act, they must be able to weigh up the pros and the cons, regurgitate their decision, clearly and understand what I'm saying. If they need an interpreter, if they don't understand, even if they are sure they understand, it's so important to not discuss anything and wait until the interpreter is there, because they are required for a reason. And talking or going ahead may just cause confusion, and the patient would not be able to act on this anyway to give consent. As in order to give consent, you must have capacity. And if they do not know what's going on, yeah, if they do not know what's going on, they may be able to give consent, but they don't understand what's best for them. So yes, we allow patient autonomy, how as one of our pillars. However, it's not really autonomy if they don't fully understand what is happening. And another, acting under beneficence, we want this patient to have the best outcome. In order for that to happen, they need to understand what's happening. So the best time would be to wait for the interpreter until negotiating anything further about consent or procedures. In the meantime, we could try to test the boundaries of what they know of a scenario, but it's just very important to make a distinctive point. We will not go for any confirmations without an interpreter. As in the meantime, when the interpreter arrives, you'll have to go through it again. And as someone that's most likely in a busy hospital with how things are, you would not want to waste time. And if they need an interpreter, there's a slight chance, probability that they might not be that comfortable in a room alone. But we've got to make sure they feel safe and secure about this interpreter. Offer them food, depending on the hospital. Some places allow patients to, some patients don't. Make sure they're comfortable, sitting down, not standing. And they might even have any questions. Answer any questions they have in the meantime to ensure they are comfortable. Absolutely make sure that you do not appear stressed, frustrated, or annoyed with the interpreter, as this could diminish the communication quality between us and the patient. I think that's more of a trick question, you know. Okay.